What's up, Buck Squad? I'm your host, Jaron. I'm going to tell you why Bradley Chubb would not be a bad plan B if the Bucs can't get Max Crosby.
Marcus Ray, what's up, Buck Squad? I'll tell you why Isaiah Likely, I don't know if he's a legit option or not.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'll tell you why the Bucs should be happy that guys like Bradley Chubb continue to hit the market.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
All right, Buck Squad. Well, thanks for joining us today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Like I said, this is the Buck Squad show. We got a Bradley Chubb possible update. Could he be a legit option for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Then Greg Auman put his prediction out for Lavonte David and Mike Evans, where he thinks they will end up next season. Isaiah Likely, is that a legit option? And then we will end it with our mock draft Monday, where we take a look at a mock draft and see what they have Tampa Bay taking. But first, let's start with Bradley Chubb. I mean, the Dolphins just cleared house today. They got rid of Chubb, got rid of Tyreek Hill. That's another big one that's on the market. Chubb is obviously coming off of, in 2024, had an ACL. And then this year, he played in all 17 games, started all 17, had 8.5 sacks, 47 tackles, and 8 tackles for loss, which was down from his 11 sack and 11 TFLs in 2023. But outside of, obviously, the year he tore his ACL, he's been fairly available. I mean, he played in 2022. He played in he started in 15 of the 16 games. 2023, he played in all 16. And then in 2025, played in all 17. So I don't think – I've seen some of the comments where they're like, hey, he's not much of an upgrade from Reddick. I would disagree with that. I think he's still a legit pass rusher. Now, he's not Max Crosby, so I've seen some of those comments too. And that's the thing. Like the reason why I said he's a good plan B is that if you can't make that trade for Crosby, maybe someone else is offering more, or maybe you don't want to offer what the Raiders want. I don't think Bradley Chubb would be a bad next option. I really don't.
I agree with you, Jaron, because every year that he's been healthy enough to play at least 14 games, he has at least 7.5 sacks. So the proof there is that his sack rate is as high or higher than anyone you've got on your team, a little bit higher, really, than anyone you have on your team. We've talked about the need to get someone a little above the caliber of Yaya Diaby. Yes, you're replacing technically Hassan Reddick, but you don't want that to be the bar. Hassan Reddick did not have a productive season for you in Tampa whatsoever. They're not replacing the Hassan Reddick of a few seasons ago. They're replacing the older version of him that does not look like a starter in the National Football League anymore. So what you're really trying to do is upgrade the Yaya Diaby spot, have Diaby be your number 2 pass rusher, and have a new number 1. I still think Bradley Chubb is a better option to do that. I do think he would be of higher caliber than Diaby. Now, maybe Diaby has another tier to improve. I mean, he's still on the younger side of his career, but again, I think Chubb has had enough production to say that he would be an upgrade as your number 1 pass rusher. And look, again, we've talked here on the show about what the Bucs can get or what they'd have to give up if they could get Max Crosby, the kind of money that you'd be paying if you swung at Trey Hendrickson, which I think is far less likely. And the Bucs have been known not to swing. That's not a fun point of view to have. It's not a fun reality. Everyone wants to get the big name, but the practical thing for Tampa would probably be more so along the lines of Bradley Chubb. And look, I still think his entrance into the free agent market is important no matter what the Bucs do, because the Bucs have a clear need there. And a simple supply and demand equation is important for the Bucs in free agency, where they want as many people at the edge rusher position to be available as possible, because there's going to be a few teams inevitably that are going to have a lot of cap space, that are going to be willing to sign the Trey Hendricksons of the world should he become available, or might be desperate enough to give 3 first-round picks to Max Crosby instead of 2. And so you want as many options available as possible. Again, now I'm not telling you that my first play is just to settle for Bradley Chubb. I absolutely would be in on the Max Crosby negotiations, but the reality is we know how reluctant Jason Light is to make these moves. I think that he could be convinced a little bit more of the number that Bradley Chubb is going to be on than opposed to these other couple of options that we've talked about these last couple of weeks.
Watch the documentary on the Bucs. If you guys haven't, I think it's very educational. It's been that for me. And we don't gotta get into networks and different stuff, but I learned a lot about the Bucs just watching this documentary like the last week or so. I'll tell you this. Here's the thing. Bradley Chubb is a guy that is legit. He can play football. And you know what, Ryan? The one thing I like about you when you do the show, I know you do your homework. And I love James too. James is a beast. So are you, Jaron. So I feel like the small man on the totem pole whenever we do this show. But I will tell you this, though. Bradley Chubb, his rookie year, had 12 sacks. His third year, he had 7.5. 2 seasons ago, he had 11. So he went to Denver. He played 5 years, 4 years in Miami. His second year in Miami, he had 11 sacks. And so, he didn't play in 24. And then even 8.5 sacks. Like, who's mad at that? You know what I mean? Like, if you can get a guy like Chubb who can get in there, mix it up. You got Yaya. You got Vita. Got all these people. Lavonte David, 1 more year left. And so, ask yourself, he might be a 14-sack guy in this system. Mm-hmm. See, the crapshoot that every NFL team, when they walk up to the crap table and they grab the dice, they have to roll the dice. And then whatever happens, happens. So either you're going to hit or you're going to lose. And so nothing is ever a guarantee. But if you can get a guy like Bradley Chubb for cheap at his age with his experience, then you're talking about a guy with 48 career sacks. So you're not expecting much. I mean, Ryan, you brought up Reddick. Reddick played a lot of time in Arizona. I know all of the coaches at one point from Arizona went to Tampa. Todd Bowles included, Larry Foote, Bruce Arians, everybody came from Tampa right before COVID. You have to understand that even though Reddick is not what he was, Reddick at one point in a 3-year span had 38 sacks. 11, and 16. So with Carolina, Philly, he had 27 sacks in Philly in a 2-year span. What you have to understand is that when you have guys like Brandon Graham and you're on a Super Bowl winning team, it comes down to the system. Who are you within the system? So when you see a free agent that doesn't pan out, either they're old, either they get the money in the contract and they don't play the same, or, it's just a situation where they don't have the help around them. I still think Hassan Reddick he's not old. He's not like decrepit old. But I think that when you look at a guy like Chubb, I think Chubb can help the Bucs. I do. And I think that if you surround him with a first rounder, and just tell Chubb to go in there on third down, and create a havoc play on 33% of his plays, I think you'll get your money's worth. But if you ask him to lead the league in sacks or to get 17 sacks or to be a guy that is not who he is, then I think you're asking for problems and you're not going to get your money's worth. I think Bradley Chubb will be a great pickup for the Bucs in free agency, and then they can spend their money on a couple of linebackers and a couple of late-round edge rushers. The one thing I want you guys to know, the last thing I'll say is this. There will never be a shortage of edge rushers in football. There's only 3 positions in football that exist. Quarterback is like Washington, D.C. So that's an entity of its own. Everybody else, you're either a lineman or you're a space player. My son is top 100 player in the country right now in the class of 28. I tell him every day, if you can't catch, cover, run, tackle, then you're a lineman. So when I say lineman, either you protect the quarterback or you sack the quarterback. So you have to understand that what the Bucs need is a guy that can get in there, mix it up on mixed downs. A mixed down is 2nd and 7, and it's 3rd and 13. It's not 1st and 10. So if you're asking Bradley Chubb to stop the run every down and go get 18, 17 sacks and solve all the Bucs problems, it ain't happening. But for what he brings to the table, I think it's a good look.
Yeah, I mean, he had 8.5 sacks, which, like I said, is down from the 2023 season, but it's still a really good season. Another stat that I look at, and one that I think might be just as important as sacks, is he had 48 pressures last year, which was 28th amongst all edgemen, so 115 qualified. He was 28th. And I say that the reason why I say it's just as important as sacks, in my opinion, is because we've seen some teams that just will throw the ball quick to make sure they don't get sacked. And so pressures then are a really good stat. Sacks can be kind of misleading. A lot of times you have to have great coverage. You have to have a quarterback that holds the ball too long. Like, a lot of things got to go your way, obviously. But I think if you told me, like, hey, you can have one of two things. You can either trade several assets for Max Crosby, or you can sign Bradley Chubb, maybe sign Hassan Reddick back, re-sign him back, and then draft an edge guy. And so now you have Yaya, whoever you drafted, Chubb, and then Reddick as your 4 edge. I might take that over going for Crosby. And again, Crosby is elite, and I've said I think he might make them a Super Bowl contender. But having that kind of depth, and as you mentioned, Marcus, Hassan is going to be 32. He's not ancient old, but he's getting older. But if he doesn't have to play every down, and then on passing downs, you just send him out there and tell him just get after the quarterback, I think he could still do that. And so I think those 4 guys, like, if you had that depth, I think that's even better than trading a lot of assets for a Max Crosby.
And I do think that in general, that's how the Bucs have kind of looked at it over the course of time, is they have been more of a collection of the parts than star talent type of unit, and I think too that just the financial difference too. I mean, even when you're acquiring Crosby, you're going to be acquiring more money than you would be paying Chubb. So on top of the draft capital that you're giving up, I mean, you're also still going to be a little bit more limited financially. Again, the Bucs are kind of somewhere in the middle of the salary cap space right now as we head towards the offseason. We'll see how much that changes in the next couple of weeks before free agency actually begins, but it shouldn't change too much. So again, I think that Chubb makes a whole lot of sense for them. And as you said, guys, I mean, there's going to be another. It's not just one move, right? There's not just you just do this one thing and you just fast forward through the rest of the offseason and it's all good. You have to put multiple front 7 guys into the fold for the next season through the draft, through free agency. When we talk a little bit later in the show, there's going to be a tight end discussion. There's going to be a corner discussion. So there's obviously a whole to-do list, a whole checklist. But again, I think we can all agree that what it just boils down to first and foremost is how can you affect the passer in a different way than you could last year, because you did not have many avenues to actually affect the passer last year for Tampa. And so, again, I do like the Bradley Chubb part of it. Again, he's going to probably command a little bit less money and be in favor of a fit for him since he was released, since he is going to get that money from Miami too. So, again, I do think that the stars would align for him to be able to be a very good value for Tampa if they were going to go that route.
I'll give you that. And the thing about Chubb is like he's the type of guy in the right system, in the right scheme, he could thrive. I mean, and Todd Bowles could actually revive this man's career. I mean, let's face it, Miami wasn't good. They were okay. They've got a lot of issues. That's why they cleaned house. When you clean the house, like if I clean my house right now, that means there's a lot of things going on that are dirty and stinky and nasty and need to be tightened up. So when Miami makes that type of move and you let a guy like Chubb go and he's still gonna get his money, that's kind of scary because if he falls into the right hands, he could be a piece that's missing. And the one thing that I know about Jason Licht is that he protects his draft picks. If he drafts you, you're a Buck for life. You can go back to, you got Chris, you got Mike, you got Lavonte. I mean, if Jameis Winston wouldn't have threw X amount of interceptions, he would still be the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand, when they hired this man, he came in with a plan that has worked. That's obviously the Tom Brady free agency and Ndamukong Suh and all the guys that they signed got them a Super Bowl, kind of saved the Bucs a little bit. Even Antonio Brown. I was his mentor for 18 months. So you have to understand, and I know we got to get to the next topic, but the Bucs have something that's working, and the Glazers aren't afraid to put the dice on the table. And if Chubb is a guy that makes sense, they'll do it.
What will Lavonte David and Mike Evans do? Well, Greg Auman weighs in. Don't go anywhere. Well, finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone in the network nearby with availability, but you also want a doctor who really listens, makes you feel comfortable, explains things clearly, and helps you walk out feeling confident about your next step. Your diamond in the rough doctor exists, and finding them is easy with Zocdoc. Zocdoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can choose someone you truly connect with. I love that you can search for specialty or symptoms and quickly find the right fit. Being able to choose in-person or video visits makes scheduling way easier. You can check the verified patient reviews to get a real sense of the doctor's vibe and communication style. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to Zocdoc for sponsoring this message. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for another segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Reminder, this is just extra content that we do twice a week, Monday nights and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to follow us. This doesn't take anything away from what James does. He still does great work Monday through Friday, so check his work out as well. But the big thing for Bucs fans is what happens with Lavonte David and Mike Evans. Well, Greg Auman, he did his top 100 free agents and gave his prediction for everyone. He did it on Fox Sports. At number 63, he had Lavonte David, and he talked about how he kind of seemed to step slower, which we've talked about this past year. And he did say that he's only choosing between retiring or returning to Tampa. But he concluded that to hear him talk on the podium after his final game, he sounded content to walk away with a prolific, memorable career. And I know the last update was Lavonte said he has not made his decision as of yet. I kind of agree with Greg, and we've talked about it a few times. I think Lavonte is probably done. Maybe you can convince him. I think it's one of those that if you're able to sign some linebackers in free agency, maybe draft one or two, and Lavonte understands that he doesn't have to come in and play almost every single down, that there's a lot of depth, and he can kind of pick his spots at his age, then I think he'd be more open to coming back. But if he has to come in and do what he did last year, I don't see him coming back for that. I think he's at the point where he'd much rather just kind of move on, which ultimately I still think he moves on either way.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell because I feel like every week or two there's a little bit of a little bit of a move of the needle. He had the story a day or two ago. I can't remember who did the story, but he's quoted as saying he believes that he can still play at a very high level. And that's interesting messaging, but because I also think too, though, when you are a Hall of Fame caliber player and you're trying to figure out how you want to go out, one of the things you want to make sure you do is you don't want to be the guy that retires too late and you're just kind of out there looking like a shell of yourself. Right. And then people have that as their last image of you on a football field. And so, last year you could tell at times Lavonte was certainly not the Lavonte that we know and love, but he was still a pretty productive player, and he was still their best linebacker because of whatever the heck was going on beside him at times. So, I think that the reality is for Tampa is Tampa side, you want him back because it's going to be hard to find two linebackers better than him. Unless you're going to spend some real capital on that. Now, again, I think that they should be drafting a linebacker at his position, second or third round, or somewhere earlier than later in the draft, and they should be targeting somebody in free agency. I believe that very same article that Greg wrote had Nakobe Dean of Philadelphia going to Tampa as a linebacker replacement. So that would be the type of thing you're looking to do. But I think that with Lavonte, it's just. I mean, gosh, in his heart of hearts, does he feel that he needs to prove that he has more left in him? Did he not feel he played to the best of his ability last year? Like he is capable of more if he comes back? Does he want to go out with a team that completely fell apart and should have won the division and completely blew it against teams that we were all shocked that they lost to down the stretch? So that's what's eating at these guys' minds. I definitely have moved to the side that Mike Evans will come back, and we'll talk about him again in a second. But with Lavonte, I will definitely double down and say this: if Tampa makes the playoffs, he's retiring. I think that them blowing it in a very winnable division is complicating it in these guys' minds because they know on a piece of paper that they should still be beating these teams. These teams have not figured themselves out yet. And as evidenced by Atlanta changing coaches and GM, by evidence by, Dave Canales still written up on hot seats for next year for Carolina, New Orleans getting praised for winning 6 or 7 games this year. I mean, that's the state of the division right now. So on one hand, these guys are like, if I can come back, I still feel I'm at a good level, and we can win the division, why would I not? The other side of it is, wait a minute, we did blow the division, and I am going to be a year older. Do I want to go out losing the division again and maybe looking even less productive? So I don't envy that side of it because that is torture to someone that has been so good for so long. But I think, Jaron, you made a good point. I can see him waiting a little while to maybe seeing this kind of an NBA thing with star players, seeing if they want to get traded or not, trying to see what the roster construction is going to look like and what it means towards their chances of winning the division next year.
Well, that's what
Oh, go ahead, Marcus.
No, Jaron, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've seen older players also wait so they don't have to go to training camp just to save reps on their bodies, too. We've seen that.
That's what I was about to say. Like, this could be a situation where you go through free agency, you go through the draft, and then Lavonte looks at it and says he could retire in July. He could retire 4th of July, and the Bucs, depending on their situation, who they draft, I think they should draft a guy like Sonny Styles. I'm not saying Sonny Styles is the next Derrick Brooks, but he is freakishly athletic like Brooks was. People tend to forget Derrick Brooks was the number 1 safety coming out of high school in the class of 1991. So, when you go back and watch him in college and what he did and when Dungy was there and you talk about 4 defensive touchdowns, that Super Bowl year, and Gruden was there, and my thing is this, I think Lavonte David, when I watched him at Nebraska, he was a freak, and he kind of gave us a reason to watch Nebraska, and then defensively through all the head coaches, Lovie Smith and Schiano and all these people, Lavonte David gave us a reason to have hope for the Bucs. And he's always been a great player. And when you're a Hall of Famer, the one thing Hall of Famers want to do is this. They want to go out on top. Their last ride wants to be one of those ones where they at least either made a run or they won it, but they don't want to go out in the toilet bowl. So I think Lavonte is going to wait and see. I think the Bucs and the Glazers are going to give him a chance to decide, listen, give us free agency, give us the draft, and then if he doesn't want to go, he's going to stay in shape. But if he doesn't want to go for year 14, 15, whatever it is, everybody's going to be okay with that because he's stamped. He's official. But if it doesn't make sense, because he doesn't need the money, he doesn't need the prestige, he's done. We know he's going to wear a yellow jacket. And it might not be first ballot, but he's going because he's been one of the best Mike linebackers we've seen in the last 12, 13, 14 years. So I think for Lavonte, it's just a matter of, does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Always ask yourself that question. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, he can get another, 17 games of a paycheck and some wear and tear on his body. But if he doesn't think the Bucs have made the right moves to win a Super Bowl, once you win one, you want to win two. Trust me. I was Tom Brady's captain at Michigan. Okay. I was a year ahead of him. I've been knowing him for 31 years. And those type and Charles Woodson too, he was my roommate. When those type of guys win the Super Bowl, they play long enough to go out on their terms. And I think that's what Tampa and Lavonte are talking about right now. What are his terms going to be?
And you brought up a great point, Marcus. If they don't make the necessary improvements to the roster where Lavonte thinks they have a legit chance, I don't see why he would put his body through that, except he might want the tackle record. I mean, that's something he is very close of getting, obviously. We know that. And so one more season, he would get it. Heck, one more game, he'll get it most likely. So it's something that could motivate him as well. But on the flip side, his mark in Tampa history is already etched in stone. It's not like, oh, you have to get that, then we'll put you in the Ring of Honor. Like, no, he's already going to be in the Ring of Honor kind of thing. And so that might not motivate him enough. But, yeah, I think this is something that might drag out for a while unless they can convince him now to come back. But I think it's one of those things that he probably doesn't want to put many reps on his body. So waiting through training camp, waiting till the summer makes a lot of sense for him. And then at that point, you can find out what kind of team is going to come back. Is it a team that's just going to be good enough to win the division like it's been the last several years? Or is it a team that's not only can win the division, but can make a run at this thing? And I think that will ultimately be the key for him because he has nothing else to prove as a Buck.
He doesn't. And again, that's why on one hand, it would be like, okay, you could understand the retirement. But like I said, again, I just think that the scales have tipped enough here in the postseason really since the regular season ended. I mean, I think that going into the year, I would have put the odds of him coming back around a 20% chance. I think he was like 80-20 retired after the season. And then just with the way it went down, I just think that he would prefer not to go out that way. And
it's
so
probably 90-10. He was not going to retire or was going to retire when they went to bye week.
Yeah, even better odds. They're clearly winning the division. Yeah. We'll see what kind of seed they are. Yeah. And so, I think that those odds are now probably more likely he comes back. But again, I don't want to say for sure. Again, he might start to do the ramp up process in the off season and then be like, you know what, never mind. I mean, again, I don't know for sure, but I do think that again, it just doesn't sit right with those guys who, by the way, again, don't let it be lost on us that when Lavonte David and Mike Evans started with Tampa was in the midst of their incredible amount of losing football, and they were not winning anything. And they have been able on the back half of their career to not only enjoy the Super Bowl title, but enjoy relevancy, enjoy some of the best years the Bucs have had, and one of the best, probably the best or second best stretch of Bucs history, the last 5 or 6 years, even despite the fall apart this year. So I think that it's not lost on them that they're still in position to make some more positive history with another successful season beyond the obvious Lavonte David tackles, that winning another division, going to another playoffs, again, continues what has been. It's unfortunate to say because it doesn't feel like they've done a ton of things the last 5 or 6 years. But again, historically, the Bucs have had a lot of trouble. That's why they got the most, the worst winning percentage of all time. So this last stretch of ball for them has been very meaningful after what had happened early in their careers.
And very quickly, I'll say this, when I said those guys want to go out on top, they really do. And everybody in the NFL that's a veteran wants to retire when they're older. I mean, you're talking January, February, but give it in April, May, give it June, give it some off-season workouts, and those guys get that itch, like that one more. Like when Ray Lewis said, one last ride. Let's give it one last one. And that itch will come back, and I think it will for Lavonte sometime around May, June. And I think the Bucs are going to wait.
And it would be nice also for him to come back and be like, this is my last year. Then he can kind of get a proper goodbye too from fans. Although that's not something that he would even care about probably, but it would be cool for the fans to kind of experience that. All right, coming up next, Isaiah Likely. Is he a likely option? We'll talk about that next. Whoever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back here for another segment of the Bucs Squad show. We didn't even get to get into the Mike Evans in that one. We ran out of time, but ultimately Greg Auman did predict him to come back to Tampa Bay, which we've talked about. Now, there was a report out there, I believe it was earlier today, about him possibly going to the Chiefs, and they called it a very real possibility. That's something to look at. But does the Tyreek Hill news change that for the Chiefs? But let's dive into Isaiah Likely, because obviously a tight end is going to be a need unless they sign Cade Otton back, which we've all talked about him. We think he's a very solid option. Likely has had over 300 yards every year he's been in the league in his 4 years. And but he's coming off his worst season of his career, 307 yards and only one touchdown with Baltimore. I don't know how much, like, if you add me, I like Likely, don't get me wrong, but I think if you add me pick, I'd rather have Cade Otton. Just I think he does more for the team. You don't have to feed him the ball. I feel like Likely is more of a guy that you got to get him touches, whereas Cade, you can give him touches here and there, and he can be a really good blocker. So for me, I think Cade is kind of the guy that I would go with between if I got to choose between the two. And I don't know how much of a fit Likely would be.
Well, here's the thing that everyone, I mean, not just the Bucs, are going to have to consider with Isaiah Likely, that he's not actually been the number one tight end his entire career so far. You know, Mark Andrews has been that, and Likely got banged up where I think that he would have started to take over more load, but he was a little bit banged up this year, missed a few games, was not as healthy in some others. So it's hard to tell if he, for 17-game season, is your number one tight end, what the numbers would actually jot up to. I'd have the suspicion there's a higher ceiling there, but there is the blocking element too, which again is not the sexy thing to talk about, but it is something that Tampa likes to employ a lot. It's kind of why they have, I think, where there are a couple of other tight ends, these mid to late round tight ends that they've gone with, the Payne Durhams of the world, they tried to get a receiving tight end or two because they knew that Cade Otton was a substantial blocker, and they also went with the O'Keefe pick at 1.2 because they knew that would be their specialty, blocking tight end fullback hybrid. And so I feel like the Payne Durham, the Devin Culp was more to see if they could find another receiving threat. I don't know, though, if they want to go all the way on the receiving end for their tight end position when they already feel they have good wide receivers, because I think that's the why. Why do you like Cade Otton as a blocker, or why do you like just a guy like O'Keefe who is almost never going to go out for a route? It's because you like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and at that time, again, you know, it would have been rookie Jalen McMillan. Now it's second-year Jalen McMillan plus rookie Emeka Egbuka. I mean, you have options at wide receiver, and assuming if, you know, Greg Auman is correct and Mike Evans ends up back in Tampa next year, then there should be no change there. So I do think that it's worth considering if you actually think that Isaiah Likely would have a higher ceiling as a pass catcher. Does it override the blocking that he's not going to be as good as in their perception? So, again, I would kind of lean Otton for that reason. I think Likely is going to be this nice hybrid guy that will always make very cool and athletic plays, but is probably on a game-to-game basis not as functionally consistent for an offense.
I think you have to talk to Zach Robinson and find out what he wants. If we're talking Cade Otton getting re-signed, I have no problem with that. Obviously, the Bucs have weapons on the outside. I told you guys last week, I am a huge Kyle Pitts guy. And not that you scrap the run game, but I'd rather have 5 shooters on the field, on the basketball court than 2. Okay. And so I feel like with the Bucs offense, regardless of who they have at tight end, it just comes down to what Zach Robinson, the new OC, what he wants to do. The thing I like about Likely is that he played at Coastal Carolina, and he was there from 2018 to 21. He scored 5 touchdowns per season the first 3 years. Then he scored 12 touchdowns in 2021. I don't know if you guys really know this, but I was an offensive coordinator for a couple of years in high school. I studied Coastal Carolina's offense. And the thing that made it go, they were a triple option offense. Obviously, their head coach now is at Liberty. But when Coastal Carolina got hot during COVID and they had that run, and you have to understand, if you're going to be a triple option offense, you have to block. You need a tight end that can stretch the field, or a guy that can, after you run the triple so much, and Coastal ran the triple out of every formation. Like, that was their base offense. It was triple option. And it was so effective because of Likely. Now, I'm not saying Zach Robinson's going to run the triple. I'm just saying that depending on what he wants to run, Likely could be a great fit. You don't always have to be a great run blocker in today's offense. If they want you to be a great run blocking tight end, they'll go 12 personnel. They'll go 13. They'll put their best receiver out there, one-on-one, 3 tight ends, 1 back, and say, load the box, and I bet that corner can't stop my guy. And I think Zach Robinson is a guy that will get creative enough with this offense to create mismatches. So Isaiah is a guy that when I watched him in college, he was a problem. I really thought he was the MVP of the offense. I know they had a quarterback that can run, a couple try-hard running backs. But when you really watch Coastal back then, they were 21 personnel. They would line up and they would run the triple, and every now and then they would slip Likely out, and he was a matchup problem. But they could run the ball. So the question is, when you talk about tight end, you have to ask yourself, what's our identity on offense? And for a tight end to be effective, if you want to be a run guy first, Mike Evans on the outside, all the weapons, your tight end just has to be a guy that can sting someone every now and then. And I think Likely could be that guy. I don't know if you sign him in free agency and get rid of Cade. Like I said, I think you go all in on Kyle Pitts, and then you go 99 Rams and you just score 40, 37 points a game and just say, hey, we're going to outscore you, and I got more shooters than you, like Golden State. But Likely is a guy that I think in the right system, he can be a major, major problem. And so, I know his stats weren't obviously great, but you're talking about a guy that has 14 touchdowns for the Ravens. Spent his whole career there. He had 6 touchdowns 2 years ago, and he averaged 11.7 yards a catch. In 2023, he averaged 13.7 yards a catch. So in an offense that Zach Robinson wants to create with a Bucky Irvin, with all the weapons, all you need is a tight end that can get you 3 catches a game, 3 first downs when it matters. If your run game's solid, you can go vertical down the field, something that the Bucs didn't really couldn't do this year, especially after Halloween. So you have to ask yourself, what do you want? And I just think likely could be a good fit depending on what Zach wants to do.
Oh, he can absolutely stretch the field, to your point. I mean, that's the one thing he did bring to that Ravens offense that didn't have a lot of weapons. And we have to remember, Mark Andrews is one of the better tight ends in the NFL, and that's who he was behind. But there was, as Ryan mentioned, there was a legit point of this season. People thought he was going to take over that starting job over Mark Andrews. Then he got injured. Mark Andrews caught fire towards the end of the year. Remember, there was even rumors about Mark being on the trading block to Tampa during the season. And so, but of course, like I said, he gets injured likely, and then Mark takes off, and then Mark signs an extension, and now Isaiah is likely gone. But I do think, to your point, Marcus, he could bring a lot of good things to Tampa. And maybe I will say this, there are a lot of just really good not pass, but just blocking tight ends in general out there that you can get for pretty cheap as a backup. And so if you're worried about the blocking from likely, you could always add one of those guys as a blocker, an extra guy that comes in and just blocks for you and go 21 personnel or whatever, and have likely still out there as a receiving threat. But he would bring a lot of good things. Now, and I don't think he has this. I haven't heard that he has this, but you wonder if he has the ego of, hey, I want my 40 touches this season or whatever. Like, if I'm going to get paid this amount of money, I want this amount of touches. That would be one thing you worry about, because you have so many receivers, assuming Mike Evans comes back, that are also going to need their touches. And so, again, I have never heard that he's a problem. I don't think he is a problem at all, but that would be something that you would have to vet, at least in the conversations with him.
So, and something you hit on, Marcus, is what does Zach Robinson want? And what I mean by that is he's coming from a place with two very interesting free agent personnel, with not only Kyle Pitts, but also Tyler Algier. And you want to talk about gluttony on the offensive side of the ball, it would be to bring in Tyler Algier as your number two back, a guy that, quite frankly, I think could start in the National Football League as a running back. I don't know what his end goal is going to be in free agency, but I do think he's one of the 32 best backs. Ball security is incredible, very tough, physical, nearly I can count on one hand, it feels like, how many times a game he goes down on the first hit. I mean, he's always falling forward. So with the Kyle Pitts part of it, since we've been talking likely and tight ends, does Zach Robinson vouch for Kyle Pitts, someone that got back up to 900 yards last year, who we always look at as a failure because of how highly he was drafted, and tight ends never go that high. But if you just compare him to other tight ends, you would be tickled to have a 900-yard, multiple touchdown tight end. I mean, that's way more productive than what Cade Otton has been. So does he vouch for Kyle Pitts? Is that where you want to spend some money? So again, I do think that I think the tight end is the most fascinating conversation offensively, and I don't even think it's close, because yes, I could make an argument for Algier or someone else in free agency as a new number two back, since it's so obvious it's not going to be Rachaad White next year. You could market to me that you want Tucker to move up, but then also what about a draft pick? So there's a lot of things they can do with that, but I still think tight end is far and away is going to be far and away the most interesting, and also the best glimpse into what they're actually thinking offensively in 2026, how explosive they want to be, how they want to function, and that sort of thing.
Well, the thing is the problem with the NFL is it's a copycat league. So everybody's looking for the next Travis Kelce. And I'll tell you this, Travis Kelce, he's near and dear to my heart because he's from Ohio. He's from Cleveland. Played college football at Cincinnati. And the one thing you can't predict is his production in the NFL from a place like Cincinnati. It's just not a football school. But, when you look at his production, now everybody's thinking we want that. And so that's the reason why a guy like Kyle Pitts gets drafted so highly. And then when you look at how his development in Atlanta was, it was pretty good over the last 5 years. And then, when you have a Zach Robinson who had success with certain guys like Pitts, go back and watch the tape. He absolutely destroyed the Bucs. I mean, he was a matchup problem from hell. So, regardless of who you get at tight end, it really depends on how you use them and what they look like. depending on your system. But I just think that, we're talking about likely. I think he can be a productive guy. He was a number 2 for a long time. But as I mentioned, when he was in college, he was a number 1, and he was in a different system. But that system worked because of his presence. And if you had poor eye discipline, he'll make you pay. And the reason he's in the league is because of how they used him in college. And I think that with a lot of players, depending on how you use them, will determine their production.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what Tampa does at the tight end position during free agency, and maybe they look at someone in the draft as well. All right, coming up next, it's Mock Draft Monday. We'll talk about who they have Tampa taking in the latest mock draft. Well, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for one final segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Reminder, this is just extra content that we do twice a week, Monday nights and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure to check that out. Doesn't take away from what James does. He still does great work Monday through Friday, so check that out as well. He'll be back on Wednesday with us. He's just doing some traveling today. But, all right, one of the latest mock drafts, this one's by Dan Parr of NFL.com. He has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking edge rusher Akeem Mesidor from Miami. He said the Miami product's age, he turns 25 in April. We'll get a lot of attention leading up to the draft, but for a Bucs team that is presumably in win now mode, Mesidor is an edge rusher who is ready to contribute from day one. The home state hero is an excellent fit for Todd Bowles' defense. To that point, he played 6 seasons in college. He had 1 redshirt year and 1 COVID year, and then the 4 other years. But this last year was by far his most productive. He had 17.5 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks, 63 tackles, was a great compliment to Ruben Bain out there. And he does fit a lot of the things that Todd Bowles wants to do. The risk with going someone that old, there's risk and reward. The reward is he should be ready to play immediately. The risk, though, is you might not have him at his peak for very long. And so do you risk that instead of going for one of the younger guys, an R. Mason Thomas, David Bailey, if he's still there? I know a lot of mocks have him going top 10 now, but do you risk doing that? That's the big question with him because of that age.
And I would like to get Marcus your thoughts on the fact that Mesidor's production went so far up this season compared to every other year. And just talking this through, do you think it had something to do with him being 24, almost 25, and playing against guys 4 years younger, in a lot of cases 3 to 4 years younger? Or do you think that it's something you would not worry much about? Do you think it's just he needed a little bit longer to grow, needed to change some technique, and now he's a first-round type of player? What do you think?
You know what, Ryan? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked me that because old is the mold. Indiana, the last three national champions were veteran football teams. Indiana's average age was 23 years old. Ohio State, they were old. Michigan in 2023, they had at least 44 players that were 4th, 5th, 6th-year players. thanks to COVID, thanks to red shirt, thanks to injuries. So if you're going to win a national title in college football, then you're going to have a veteran team. I don't care, like everybody was talking about Oregon's 5 stars and 55 guys that were 4-star, 5 stars. They were too young. I mean, you're talented, but you're not there yet. So college football, if you're going to win in college football, Ryan, you're going to win with a grown man football team. And here's the benefit of it. Here's what I like about NIL. See, I played for the free. Me and Charles Woodson talked about it 2 days ago. Like, he won a whole Heisman Trophy on defense. I was his sidekick, whatever. But you have to understand that old is the mold. So if you're a 25-year-old guy and you've played 6 years of college football or you've been in the system, guess what? Chances are you've already made some money. So you've almost got a rookie contract minus the signing bonus out of NIL. So that's the advantage of staying in college. The only reason they went to 12 teams, Ryan, is so they could get the best players to play in the bowl game. So when they had 4 teams, and if you were 5, 6 through 12, your top draft pick didn't play. And like I told Jaron a couple weeks ago, when have you ever seen a lottery pick not play March Madness? So if you want a guy like Marvin Harris Jr. to play a couple years ago at Ohio State, if you want him to play in the bowl game, expand the playoffs. Because if Ohio State doesn't make it, he's not playing. So when you look at this situation, we're talking about Messidor. He's 25 years old. Well, he's going to miss one contract. But at the same time, the reason he was so dominant, he's one of the oldest guys in college football. Imagine if you're 24 years old going up against a 19-year-old left tackle, going against a 20-year-old first-year starter at Louisville or any team in the ACC, at Pitt or whatever, and you're getting dominated by a grown man. College football now, what NIL did was they said, let's go ahead and pay these guys to stay. We are going to watch. It's an older team. They're going to win more games. The older players will be dominant. Basically, college football has become high school. So if you're a 19-year-old guy who got held back in the 7th grade, and you're in high school and you're playing against a 14-year-old center and you're a 4-star player, you're going to kick his ass. So you have to understand that's what college football is becoming. It's a farm system. But so now if you're 23, 24, 25 coming out, that's what they expect. So his numbers went up because he's a good player. I'm not sure if he's a first rounder. I mean, there's a lot of guys we could name that probably could fit that mold for the Bucs, but he's ready-made. And the last thing I'll say, Ryan, to your question, and Jaron, you can chime in, is this. I have a 16-year-old son, and he's being recruited. And my problem is they want my 16-year-old son to have the same NFL combine times as a 24-year-old. They want him to have the same bench press, same vertical, same broad jump, same 40, without the training, without 5 years of college, without 6 years of college. So in order for you to be a Division I 4-star prospect, you have to be able to compete with everybody in the portal, everybody coming out in the draft. That's a high schooler. If that was the case, I would have never played at Michigan, and Michigan wouldn't have a national title in 97. But to your point, older is the way. If you're young, they'll take you and they'll let you develop. But if you're making $1,500,000, $700,000 in college, I think the rookie minimum is just $650 or something. If you're making that type of money in college, they don't mind drafting you at 24, going on 25. And guess what? If you only play 5 years, they'll find another you.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I would just think that, I totally get it from the college perspective. I mean, you're right. Like that's why there's this inkling of like, okay, if you are 24 or so and you're going up against guys 4 or 5 years younger, I mean, we're still talking about a developmental process. It's not 28 versus 24. I can say that between those years, you're a pretty similar caliber of athlete, even if you're the fastest of fast or the strongest of strong. But that's my one hesitation with Mesdor is if the production was great as a freshman and then he just ended up playing for a long time, that would also be another consideration. He did have, 5 sacks at West Virginia, so that's a good start. He then had a couple of rough years at Miami before really turning it on this year. And then you also get into the point of, did Ruben Bain have a little something to do that? Because people started to focus on him a lot too. So I would be a little skeptical on Mesidor in the first round. I guess that's my point here. Is I think he could absolutely still be a productive pro. When you still put that kind of numbers up, you go to the national title game, you still have a lot to you. I mean, certainly he passed the eye test, but I think some of those little additional nuggets there of having, being 25 when he would go into camp and being alongside another great player and that sort of thing, that would make me say, okay, that's back to a show from the other week. That's my trade down candidate. That's like my take him in the 30s somewhere, 30s or 40s, because I either traded down or I traded my first round pick for Crosby, what have you. So I would be a little uncomfortable as of right now. Again, we'll see how all the combine stuff works out, but 15 for him is about as high as I've seen. I have traditionally seen him 20s or 30s, even 40s. So that would make me a little uncomfortable. But again, it is the position of need, so that's always a factor.
And to that point, in that draft, mock draft that he put out, Keldrick Falk was still on the board. Cassius Howe was still on the board. Those are guys you probably would put ahead of a guy like Mesdor because of their age and the production that they've had, also at a high level. But ultimately, so Marcus, you don't think the age would be an issue for Tampa that high?
Jaron, I really don't, because they want you to be ready-made. Like, the need is so high that if you take him at 15, he's going to start. Like, you're expecting him to come in. He has a ton of reps. He's strong. He would be in the equivalent of the first year or second year, or really close to his second contract after his rookie contract. My thing with him is he's only 6'3". He's 265. Okay. And, he's probably not the size, desired height, length as an NFL edge. I mean, a lot of his speed to power is average. And then when you really watch him play, he gets off balance a little bit. His footwork's not always there. And then sometimes he'll chase a play and get fooled a little bit, like when you get counters and stuff. Like when you play defensive end, let me tell you guys something. I used to coach. And so it's something called CBR, counter, boot, reverse. If you're an edge player, the first play you play is the counter. Why? Because you want to get underneath it. You want to wrong shoulder it. You take your right shoulder and you make the ball bounce to a scraping linebacker. So you take 2 blockers. So that's counter. If it's not counter, you play the boot. And then if it's not a bootleg, then you play the reverse. And sometimes he gets tricked in boot and counter. He doesn't always spill it right. And then I haven't really seen if he plays the reverse, but CBR. He's not a CBR kind of guy, but he has his upside. He's very productive. I don't know if he's a guy that you spend that kind of money on in the first round. I'm leaning more towards Ryan, where you trade down, you can get him later, because he may fall. I mean, because there's a lot of, remember I said, there's no shortage of edge rushers, and there will never be from here on out. Everybody's an edge rusher. If you're a Mike linebacker, you're an edge rusher.
And I will say, to his credit, because I wanted to see, like, okay, was it ACC? Was he racking up a bunch of sacks in the ACC? Well, he actually had 5.5 sacks and tackles for loss in 4 games in the playoff. Only 1 game against Ole Miss, he didn't have a sack, but the other games he had a 1.5 sack against A&M and then 2 sacks against Ohio State and against Indiana. So he played big in big games.
He did, and that is a fair point. One other little nugget on him, checking just perspective on the age. He is a few months older than Chris Braswell, who has now been in Tampa for 2 seasons, who would be the guy that he's replacing on the depth chart, quite frankly, since Braswell, as a second-round pick out of Alabama, has not worked out very well through 2 seasons. So, again, I don't care how old. If you're productive, that's the point that Marcus was making too, is that if he is at that age, then you are talking about someone that you expect to be starting and playing a lot from day one. Again, will they have that need if they sign someone like Bradley Chubb? Maybe not. Maybe they can go with a younger guy. But if they don't ever sign anyone of high caliber in free agency, maybe they take their chance with the guy that they feel will be more productive from day one rather than 2 or 3 seasons down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for the Bucs Squad Show. Reminder, we'll be back Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so come hang out with us. We're going to do a Q&A on Wednesday. We haven't done a Q&A in a little while, so we'll do a Q&A. So get your questions in. We'll do it at the last segment, so our Around the NFL segment. So if you have questions about the NFL or about the Bucs specifically, we can answer all of that. So make sure to join us for that. And until next time, fire the cannons.